everyone, welcome back to the channel that is nothing. I'm Jim, and let's get to it. So today we're diving on into the Dragon book tag, which, let's be real, as if we weren't going to be doing something like this on the channel. So let's dive on in. I am going to have to set a precedent. I'm not going to be able to pronounce any of these names. So let's go. Question number 1 is Alphamary? A book that was too much for one story and should have picked one topic. And for this one, I am going to go with the Maze Runner trilogy. I feel like the movies did a good job of reflecting what happened in the story, because I feel like the experiments going on in each of the mazes was just enough to keep the story going. I think that it was interesting that there was a kind of zombie-ish, thing, but also I feel like the mind reading, the telepathy in it was a bit too much, and it was too overbearing to the story. And also there was just a lot in those books that didn't make sense. Okay, next one is Antholopic Morkic. Probably not how it's pronounced at all, I am sorry. A book series that wasn't everything you hoped for, and I feel like I've got to pick the Divergent series for this one, mainly because I really enjoyed the first book. I honestly think it could have probably just been a standalone, and that just be that. They just run away at the end and that's the it. I was just happy for it to be open-ended and not to have too much more. And I started Insurgent, but I found it very, very slow and boring. And I've heard a lot about the series. I know it probably gets better and I should probably go back to it and give it a second shot, because I'm not one for just slamming a book. Actually, I am one for slamming a book off one read, but I feel like this one is a beloved series for some people, or a beloved trilogy, so I feel like I should go back and give it another go for that reason. But I also am a little bit disappointed. Spoilers if you haven't read it. I'm a little disappointed that the person who started the rebellion dies. I just feel like it's just well, we just all did that. Well, we didn't do it for nothing, but it just feels a hell of a lot more pointless now, doesn't it? Question number 3 in this tag is Dragon Beast, and that is a book that had a wild concept but somehow worked. And I picked Spark for this one because I think it's quite an interesting premise. You're bound to protect somebody from evil, but that person is kind of a bit useless in some ways, but I think it's an interesting start. I think it's a trilogy. I definitely have only read the first one, but it's cool because it's kind of contemporary but not, because set in the real world obviously, but there's magic, well not magic, but powers afoot, and I'm this is kind of interesting but also a bit cringe, because I did not heaps love the love interests, just the love aspect in that book. I would be happy if they removed that completely and just have a story instead, Number 4 in this tag is Dragonic Hybrid, and that is a book that is a mash of genre, and I have decided to pick Gone because I feel like it is kind of a coming of age book, but it's also got very undertones of horror and sci-fi aspects to it, because it's just they've wiped out, I don't know what's happened to the parents, but everyone below a certain age is still there, but there's no one above that age. They're just all gone somewhere. Don't know. I'm assuming it gets answered at the end of the series. But I think it's a quite unique genre. It's not just just solely one thing. It's a few things blended together. It's quite horrific sometimes, but also very, very interesting. Intriguing, some might even say. Number 5 is Drake, and that I think is a certain type of dragon, if people are wondering. But that is a good beginner fantasy, and I feel like I have to pick Narnia. Narnia is just where everyone sort of starts off. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is generally the one that most people read first, and it's just very wholesome vibes, 4 kids go through like a wardrobe and end up in a fantastical land, which is like what most kids dream of happening to them. And then they get to be kings and queens of this magical land. It's perfect. Perfection, love it. Wish they made more of the movies, you know? They made the good ones, I will say. Number 6 in this one is Eastern Dragon. That is Name a Book with Elemental Magic. And I feel like this one does apply to some extent, but the magic in Ink Mistress. And it kind of in Of Fire and Stars as, you know, a leading point. But Ink Mistress is so cool. Like, the fact that you can write down, like, kind of the future and it will happen, but it might not happen in the way that you intended to happen is really cool. And then the flow-on effect of this magic being set up in Ink Mistress, like the magic being sort of like, you know, the starting point is in Ink Mistress and then it continues in Of Fire and Stars, and it's pretty cool. Very gay, very magical, we love it. Number 7 in this tag is Fae Dragon, and that is Name a Fae or Fairy series that you really enjoy, and I am going to pick Infernal Devices for this one because I do really enjoy it. I need to go back and reread it because I miss them vibes. I miss it. It's so trashy, it's so good, and Jem is so underappreciated. What a character. We love him here. Number 8 in this tag is Great Serpent, and that is Name a Fantasy with an Asian setting or influence. And I am going to pick These Violent Delights. I had a bit of a high expectation going into the book, and I was pleasantly pleased. Not exactly like over the moon with the story, but like the beginning is very intense because basically straight up you're introduced to the monster and like it is spooky, spook town, spook everything. And then also you kind of have a love story there. It's very fun. It's very like progressive for what the book is, like where it's set, what it actually is about. But I like it. I'm intrigued by like the retelling. I love me some Shakespeare retelling. Number 9 in this tag is Hydra, and that is Name a Book series with 3 or more books. And I feel like I just cannot go past Harry Potter for this one. We love very low-key magical vibes here. Number 11 in this tag is Devilfish, and that is Name a Book with thievery and scams. And how could I not pick? How could I go past Six of Crows? That book is amazing. I love it. I feel like I need to read. There's so much fantasy that I feel like I need to reread, go back into the world of, especially Six of Crows, because with like everything that's happened in like the present time in that timeline, I'm like, I need to go back to when things weren't as traumatic, when characters weren't dead. I need to relive it because I'm not coping. Number 12 in this tag is Linden Dawn, a book that kept you up all night, and that was The Monster Child. It was like a Norse mythology sort of retelling Loki's child vibes, and it was very interesting. It was kind of short and it was like kind of like messed up in a lot of ways. I'm like, I have to keep reading because I am frightened and I need to know what happens. Number 13 in this tag is Ouroboros. Name a book with alchemy, and the only one I could possibly think of that I've been stuck on this question for a while because like alchemy is not really a book genre that is frequently used, I would say, and especially not in like my realm of knowledge either. But I decided to go with the Atlas 6 because I feel like it kind of has like those kind of vibes, but I'm not sure either. It's like magic as well, so it's a fruity kind of thing, you know, it's a bit of everything. Number 14 in this tag is Sea Serpent, and that is Name a Book with pirates and sea travel. And I have decided to go with my favorite in the trilogy, Siege and Storm, which is not a lot about sea travel, but it's definitely there at the beginning of the story, and I really enjoy it, and I enjoy Nikolai a lot, and he is kind of like a central character in that, and he spent a lot of time as a sea captain, so you know, I'm just gonna add it in even if you don't think it belongs here. Number 15 in this tag is Serpent Waste, and that is name a book with a shapeshifter. And I am just gonna leave it and say Malice, and then not say anything more because I feel like it is somewhat spoilery. Number 16 in this tag is The Western Dragon, and that is name a classic fantasy. And I feel like I have to pick the Grimm brothers for this one because I love them. And they have a bit of a morbid retelling sort of side. Not even retelling, those are the originals. Disney does a very fantastic job of making them, you know, palatable for children. But my favorite of all time stories within the Grimm brothers is the story of The Six Swans. I love it so much. It's very dear to my heart. And I feel like I'm not even going to tell you what it's about because you should go read it yourself. Number 17 in this tag is Worm, and that is a dark and twisty read. And I feel like I have to pick The Girl on the Train for this one because it is the first sort of murder mystery novel that I remember reading and remember being absolutely mortified by, and sort of just like wondering constantly who had done it. I mean, like, it was pretty obvious. Got to a point where it's pretty obvious who had done it, but like the narrator is like just so unreliable based on all the trauma and stuff she's going through in her life, so it's really hard to tell what's going on. Number 18 in this tag is Wyvern, and that was a character that you felt was too aggressive. And I feel like I have to pick Tamlin from A Court of Thorns and Roses because he was just weird. There was one scene in the first book, I haven't read the others as a disclaimer. I haven't read the others based on this one scene of him where he was a little bit like creepy, didn't love that, kind of was like really like aggressive towards the main character. Didn't like her either, but she definitely didn't deserve this scene happening to her, and it made me not want to read the other books. But people assure me that Tamlin is a very hateable character in the others, which makes me feel like maybe I do want to read the others just to see how much of a douchebag he is, because I know he's just an idiot and toxic in the others, and like this is just very surface level of what I know. But I'll be intrigued to know what he's like. But I still hate him either way. He was way too much. Too much and not enough at the same time. Anyway guys, that's all I've got for you today. Please like, subscribe because that is always nice, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye!